The Wall Street landscape has so dramatically changed in just a matter of days. Lehman Brothers filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
The Dow dropping more than 400 points even after the government announced its plan to rescue AIG.
Clearly, the consequences of an AIG failure would be substantial.
This is a dire emergency.
Hindsight is wonderfully 2020, but Congress, I do want to...
That isn't hindsight. That isn't hindsight. We tried to warn about the deregulatory
I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I got to tell you, I'm still in the shed.
We are going through the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression.
As President of the United States, people are going to be held accountable.
It's so important as we solve this short-term problem that we look at some of the underlying issues that have led to wages and incomes for ordinary Americans to go down.
This isn't the beginning and the end of this crisis. This is the end of the beginning if we come out with a package that will keep these institutions stable.
All right, John McCain, that was not the best of all backdrops for him trying to hang on to the White House for Republicans. He ended up losing to Barack Obama, and that financial meltdown didn't help matters any. Two quick things I noticed in some of that coverage we had at the time when all that was going on. A, I had a far lousier toupee back then. And secondly, did you notice that one shot we were showing in the middle of the free fall when the Dow was at around 10,000? For all the troubles since, we're at around 40,000. I just want to put that in perspective, that we get caught up in the tumultuous moment. But this is a scary moment for a lot of people. Doug Schoen, the former Clinton advisor, Democratic pollster, what he makes of this. Julia Manchester, the Hill national politics reporter. Doug, it goes without saying that an uphill climb for John McCain against Barack Obama at the time was made even all the more so by this free fall in the economy of the United States and the markets. Didn't help matters any. If we have something like that again, couldn't it put the same pressure on the Democratic incumbents in control of the White House?
Absolutely. Already, Neil, as we sit here today, Donald Trump and the Republicans lead Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the Democrats on handling the economy by 20 points. And Joe Biden's ratings on handling inflation are below 35%. So if we get a recession, even the beginning of a recession, that will hurt Kamala Harris and help Donald Trump. And it doesn't even have to be as extreme as we saw in 2008 and 2009 for there to be enough political benefit to put Donald Trump over the top in a very close election.
What do you think, Julia, and how it defines the race if this drags on? Because we've had these 1-2 day hits, and I'm not minimizing it, but these are big hits, but all the market averages are up quite a bit. The Magnificent Seven technology stocks are still up triple digits. So we should put it in some perspective here. That's not to lose sight of what happened and what could happen, but play it out.
Yeah, so certainly you would think in theory on paper that this would help Donald Trump to make that case. We know that, Neil, when voters go to the ballot box, they typically have the economy as their first priority in their mind. But we have to remember Donald Trump is on the Republican ballot, and Donald Trump doesn't always stay on message. So if Donald Trump were to zero in on the economy, zero in on some of these hits we've seen, make it a part of his message, stay disciplined, sure, I see that absolutely helping him. However, if we look back at this past week alone, we've seen that Donald Trump has been sort of, maybe not paying as much attention to the issues, making it much more of a personal race with Kamala Harris. And we know that a lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill, Republican operatives, strategists, they want him to ignore the debate over these criticisms or these comments about Kamala Harris's race and heritage, and focus on policy like the economy. We'll see if Donald Trump actually does that.
It's anyone's guess, but Doug Schoen, I'm reminded of Bill Clinton, of course, and when he was running for president in 1992, he argued it's about the economy, stupid. The irony was in 1992, when he was running against Herbert Walker Bush, the economy was turning around and coming out of that recession in the fall of that year, but it was deemed too little too late for average Americans and voters to appreciate it, and he ended up losing. The only reason why I mention that is perception does become reality. And for the markets to punctuate the perception that a lot of average folks have had, That could be very dangerous. What do you think?
Well, I think it could be dangerous. In this environment, we're starting with a public mood that is hostile to the incumbent party and the incumbent president. If we get the kind of turbulence we saw yesterday on a sustained basis, I think even though a recession is very, very different than inflation, the opposite, the two together will suggest instability, which, as Julia said, if Donald Trump moves away from the personal attacks and focuses on the issues like the southern border and particularly the economy, he can advantage his campaign. But those are big ifs, even if the market does show signs of weakness and a sign of recession.
Indeed. And it will become a very, very potent political issue. We're showing you Atlanta, Georgia right now, where Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are going to be making a joint appearance, no doubt talking about this latest economic development, market development, and whether it's a sign of things to come. President Trump, for his part, has said that we were looking at a powder keg in this economy and that it could implode. And some people interpreted what happened certainly yesterday as a sign that he's right, that it is starting. Others saying just the opposite. Too early to tell.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.